that's a likely possibility.
Yeah.
So that's the preface to
Right.
to the comment. But if I were to take the premise of your question, well, like why were things disappointing in terms of the real world impact? And my
Yeah.
answer would be reliability. If somehow it ends up being the case that you really want them to be reliable and they ended up not being reliable, or if reliability turned out to be harder than we expect, I really don't think that will be the case. But if I had to pick one, and you tell me like, hey, like why didn't things work out? It would be reliability, that you still have to look over the answers and double check everything. And that just really puts a damper on the economic value that can be
Got it.
produced by those systems.
They'll be technologically mature. It's just a question of whether they'll be reliable enough.
Yeah, well, in some sense, not reliable means not technologically mature. You see what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. What's after generative models, right? So before you're working on reinforcement learning, is this basically it? Is this a paradigm that gets us to AGI, or is there something after this?
I mean, I think this paradigm is going to go really, really far, and I would not underestimate. I think it's quite likely that this exact paradigm is not going to be the AGI form factor. I mean, I hesitate to say precisely what the next paradigm will be, but I think it will probably involve integration of all the different ideas that came in the past.
Is this
Well, eventually, if it gets to be much smarter than us, it'll be very good at manipulation because it will have learned that from us. And there are very few examples of a more intelligent thing being controlled by a less intelligent thing. And it knows how to program, so it'll figure out ways of getting around restrictions we put on it. It'll figure out ways of manipulating people to do what it wants.
So what do we do? Do we just need to pull the plug on it right now? Do we need to put in far more restrictions and backstops on this? How do we solve this problem?
It's not clear to me that we can solve this problem. I believe we should put a big effort into thinking about ways to solve the problem. I don't have a solution at present. I just want people to be aware that this is a really serious problem and we need to be thinking about it very hard. I don't think we can stop the progress. I didn't sign the petition saying we should stop working on AI because if people in America stopped, people in China wouldn't. It's very hard to verify whether people are doing it.
There have been some whistleblowers who have been warning about the dangers of AI over the past few years. One of them, Timnit Gebru, was forced out of Google for voicing his concerns. Looking back on it, do you wish that you had stood behind these whistleblowers more?
Timnit's actually a woman.
Oh, sorry.
So they were rather different concerns from mine. I think it's easier to voice concerns if you leave the company first. And their concerns aren't as existentially serious as the idea of these things getting more intelligent than us and taking over.
Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple, is also speaking out about the dangers he fears will come from AI. Take a listen.
Now, AI is another more powerful tool, and it's going to be used by those people, for basically really evil purposes. And I hate to see technology being used that way. It shouldn't be, and probably some types of regulation are needed.
It sounds like you agree. I
agree with that, yes.
Yeah, what should that regulation look like?
I'm not an expert on how to do regulation. I'm just a scientist who suddenly realized that these things are getting smarter than us. And I want to sort of blow the whistle and say we should worry seriously about how we stop these things getting control over us. And it's going to be very hard, and I don't have the solutions. I wish I did.
Does there need to be a meeting of all of the tech groups and governments working on this, Google, China, whatever, and some sort of set of rules of the road? I mean, how do we even protect against bad actors or rogue nations harnessing AI?
So for some things it's very hard, like them using AI for manipulating electorates or for fighting wars with robot soldiers. But for the existential threat of AI taking over, we're all in the same boat. It's bad for all of us. And so we might be able to get China and the US to agree on things like that. It's like nuclear weapons. If there's a nuclear war, we all lose. And it's the same if these things take over. So since we're all in the same boat, we should be able to get agreement between China and the US on things like that.
Do you think that tech companies will be the solution, or are they so invested in this financially And also, let's be frank, in terms of power, that they're not going to be part of the solution here.
I think the tech companies are the people most likely.
Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, just did an interview at Stanford where he talked about a lot of controversial stuff. Initially, the interview was uploaded on Stanford's YouTube channel, but a couple days later, the interview was taken down from YouTube and everywhere else. But today, I was somehow able to access the interview video after spending multiple hours. So let's watch it together and dissect some important parts of the interview.
In the next year, you're going to see very large context windows, agents, and text to action. When they are delivered at scale, it's going to have an impact on the world at a scale that no one understands yet. Much bigger than the horrific impact we've had by social media, right, in my view. So here's why. In a context window, you can basically use that as short-term memory. And I was shocked that context windows get this long. The technical reasons have to do with the fact that it's hard to serve, hard to calculate, and so forth. The interesting thing about short-term memory is when you feed you ask it a question, read 20 books, you give it the text of the books is the query, and you say, tell me what they say. It forgets the middle, which is exactly how human brains work too, right? That's where we are. With respect to agents, there are people who are now building essentially LLM agents, and the way they do it is they read something like chemistry, they discover the principles of chemistry, and then they test it. And then they add that back into their understanding, right? That's extremely powerful. And then the third thing, as I mentioned, is text to action. So I'll give you an example. The government is in the process of trying to ban TikTok. We'll see if that actually happens. If TikTok is banned, here's what I propose each and every one of you do. Say to your LLM the following. Make me a copy of TikTok, steal all the users, steal all the music, put my preferences in it, produce this program in the next 30 seconds, release it, and in 1 hour, if it's not viral, do something different along the same lines. That's the command. Boom, 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 right? You understand how powerful that is. If you can go from arbitrary language to arbitrary digital command, which is essentially what Python in this scenario is, imagine that each and every human on the planet has their own programmer that actually does what they want, as opposed to the programmers that work for me who don't do what I ask, right? The programmers here know what I'm talking about. So imagine a non-arrogant programmer that actually does what you want, and you don't have to pay all that money to. And there's infinite supply of these programs.
And this is all within the next year or two?
Very soon.
So, we've already discussed.
A priest and a badger went into a bar, and that sounds a bit like the beginning of a joke. And they keep going, telling stuff that sounds like the beginning of a joke. But then they get to the point where they need the punchline. And of course, they haven't thought ahead. They haven't thought what's going to be the punchline. They're just trying to make it sound like the lead into a joke. And then they give you a pathetically weak punchline, because they have to come up with some punchline. So, although they can explain jokes because they get to see the whole joke before they say anything, they can't tell jokes. But we'll fix that.
Okay, so I was going to ask you if comedian is a job of the future or not. Do you think it's going to...
Probably not.
All right.
So anyway.
So, but what was your reaction to it? I mean, again, you've seen things behind the scenes along the way.
A couple of reactions. My first reaction is, of all people, I thought I knew the power of data, and I was still awed by the power of data. That was a technical reaction. I was like, darn it, I should have made a bigger image net. No, but maybe not, but that was really...
You still could.
Funding is the problem. Yeah, so that was... Second, when I saw the public awakening moment to AI with ChatGPT, not just the GPT-2 technology moment, I genuinely thought, thank goodness we've invested in human-centered AI for the past 4 years. Thank goodness we have built a bridge with the policymakers, with the public sector, with the civil society. We have not done enough, but thank goodness that that conversation had started. We were participating in it. We were leading some part of it. For example, we as an institute at Stanford were leading the critical national AI research cloud